pocket to end the Vietnam War. There was no plan, and the war went on for 5 more years. Too bad if you died. Jimmy Carter ran in 1976 saying, "I'll never lie to you." Well, he lied out of all corners of his mouth. Reagan said, "I will never negotiate with terrorists. I will never trade arms for hostages." But Iran-Contra, George H.W. Bush, Oliver North, and all that ran the White House. Bush the elder also said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." But then, of course, he raised taxes. Clinton, the friend of the masses, wiped out welfare as we had known it. He repealed Glass-Steagall and deregulated toxic derivatives. Obama, in 2008, ran as a protectionist. He said that he didn't like NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Area, and that he was going to renegotiate that. And, of course, at the same time, he sent his advisor, Austin the Goolsbee of Skull and Bones, to a Canadian consulate to say, by the way, guys, this is just election year demagogy and rhetoric, and don't you worry about it, right? Now, we want to also pay attention to some of these other guys, like Ted Cruz. What does he have? They all have health savings accounts. This is basically it. Cruz comes down to 3 things. Abolish states' rights. In other words, don't let states regulate insurance companies. Have the race to the bottom, so you can an insurance company can operate across state lines without regard to state regulation. This is a strange position for these neo-Confederate states' rights freaks. Number 2, expand self-health savings accounts. And number 3, de-link health insurance from employment. Now, what is the point of that? This was in the Franklin D. Roosevelt World War II economy. You couldn't offer more money because of wage and price controls, but you could offer these perks. And that's essentially how it came about. Christie has a 12-point plan to loot and gouge Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, disability, Social Security, disability, which is so many people have run out of unemployment benefits. They have tended to fall back on their Social Security disability, and that is now being depleted. Once again, what's the answer? The 1% Wall Street sales tax. So these are the Republicans. We'll do the Democrats too. Make no mistake, we'll get the Democrats too. But in this case, it's just so blatant and so obscene and horrendous. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, our last segment already. Let's try to cover as much as we can. Now, the first thing is, the world is being subjected to a coordinated, massive brainwashing campaign. The idea is to force us all into a block universe in terms of our mental life. It is a Malthusian, zero growth, anti-human, limits to growth approach. And it's coming out of all pores, I guess, of world public opinion. First of all, let's note, unfortunately, this terrible mistake, this really lamentable posture of the Vatican on the question of so-called anthropogenic global warming. Now, last week, on the 27th or 28th of October, we had the Catholic bishops of the world come out with a statement where they point with hysteria, I guess, at the situation of the world environment, this alleged global warming, supposedly anthropogenic, and they talk about abandoning in the short run coal and oil. I'm sorry, this will lead, in the nicest terms that I can say it, to a radical increase in morbidity and mortality across the globe. It would be a hecatomb if we turned away abruptly from so-called fossil fuels, right? So-called oil and coal. This cannot be done, must not be done. And this is simply stepping way beyond the purview of a religious organization in the church. Now, of course, there's more. The World Health Organization has come out with a blood-curdling report saying, no more salami for you, no cold cuts, no hot dogs, and no red meat. Again, I think it was Il Giornale, reactionary, but fine. Gold is where you find it in this ideological chaos that we're living in. The Il Giornale said this was a terrorist report from the incompetent World Health Organization. And I guess on that one, they're on firm ground. And now we're going to have this Paris conference. This will be a grand guignol of Malthusian excess. Absolutely crazy. And, it's coming. And now today, Obama gets into the act. No to the Keystone Pipeline. Oh, my God. Not that the world has to revolve around the Keystone Pipeline, but a country that has, I believe at this point, 750,000 miles of oil and gas pipelines going back to the Big Inch of World War II because of all those German submarines were sinking the tankers off the East Coast so thoroughly. We had to fall back on the Big Inch, and then it has started from there. Many would say that the Keystone itself is a symbolic issue. In other words, the stuff is already being produced, it's already being shipped. This might be a better way to ship it than some others, but maybe. In other words, it's not like this is so important by itself, but it also shows the ideological bankruptcy of Obama and Kerry, right? Because it's allegedly the State Department who did this. So the answer is no, it will not be built. The company, again, TransCanada, wants to come back under a new president. They're appealing to a better informed president at some future time. Brace yourselves now for an orgy of pessimistic propaganda. Brace yourself. It's going to be horrendous. It's going to be, again, a grand guignol. And one of the reasons for it, as we have pointed out, is that the so-called warming seems to have slowed. In other words, the warming is either slow or it's non-existent. And fairly honest experts in the field have pointed to the fact that if we don't get some warming fairly soon, the entire theoretical edifice of climate science will collapse. And again, climate science is for charlatans. It's like saying, I'm a PhD in history, but I only do anti-French history or anti-Russian or anti-Brazilian history. That's not how you do it. The conclusions cannot be built in to the degree. But in this case, if you're a climate scientist, it's clear you have one big axe to grind, right? And that's the anthropogenic side. And of course, that you've got to have, you got to get back to solar cells and windmills. Solar cells will never produce the energy that went into making them. Neither will most windmills. So you have an economy based on renewable energy, which represents a net loss of energy, a net minus of energy. This cannot work. So even the new Prime Minister of Canada, right, who seems to be Malthusian to a very large degree, right, Trudeau, thinking of the Canadian economy, said that he wanted this built. So it hasn't happened. Okay, so brace yourself for this. Now, yesterday was November 5th, so it was Guy Fawkes. And once again, we have to congratulate Oxford Circus, I guess it is. We have to congratulate MI5 and MI6 in particular for their ability to impose this particular piece of nonsense on the world, in particular with this crazy movie from 2007, V for Vendetta. They have set the tone culturally and in terms of costumes for a whole generation of people who are sort of on the margins of things. Just remember that it's not true. In other words, Guy Fawkes was a patsy. Guy Fawkes did not know what he was doing. And the leaders of this conspiracy, right, the people who first they tried to tunnel in to the basement of the Houses of Parliament from another house, from another basement. That was too complicated a task. So then we have the people like Guy Fawkes getting into the Houses of Parliament and bringing these barrels, allegedly of gunpowder, right? So they were going to blow up King James I. And this was, of course, a key provocation in setting up or continuing the police state that had been begun under Elizabeth II and her pursuivants, that is to say, her spooks, right? Her internal security spooks. And it did. It caused a hysteria. If you want to know, how Shakespeare saw it, you can basically look at Macbeth, because Macbeth is the immediate play by Shakespeare coming in the wake of the Guy Fawkes event. Now, remember, this was a state plot, right? This was state-sponsored terrorism. And the guy, of course, who did it was Lord Robert Cecil, Lord Salisbury, because this is the Guy Fawkes occurs in the middle of what is known as the Regnum Cecilianum, which is Robert Cecil's father, Lord Burghley, I believe, who was the advisor to Elizabeth II in the first part of her reign. And then Robert Cecil is the advisor to Elizabeth, but then in particular after the death of Elizabeth, he gets to be the advisor to James I. So Cecil wants to have anti-Catholic hysteria, and he gets it. And the other thing to mention is that in the background we have Ben Johnson in touch with the Venetian embassy. So this is a fraud. This is a false flag event. Don't believe it, and put away those silly masks. Those are creepy. You creep out the public with those masks. See you in a minute, back in a week on World Crisis Radio.